Single species grass lawns.
The biggest mass brainwashing scam of all time. Lawns are overrated.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Blockchain Microprenuer. I'm your host, Digital Oil Hunter, and today we have an amazing guest I'm so excited to have talk with us. But before we get into any introductions, for those of you who are new here, this is a show and a community. We are gathering now to learn insights about how to deploy our passions with the help of technology, leverage next generation business ecosystems to prosper within, and take back some of our freedom in the form of personal data, health, and finance. Today we are speaking with Jim Gale, the founder of Food Forest Abundance, to learn more about how he is inspiring and empowering others to use our resources wisely by planting seeds for abundance. Let's go meet with Jim now. Jim, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Hunter. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm so happy to have you here to talk about your mission with our listeners here. And before we get into the details of that exciting stuff, I wanted to have a quick game of underrated, overrated, and properly rated. So I'm just going to say a few words, and if you wouldn't mind, in your personal opinion, giving me whether it's underrated, overrated, or properly rated. Make sense?
Sounds like fun. Yes.
Okay. First word for you is meditation.
Oh, gosh. Meditation is probably the most underrated thing in our world today. Silencing our mind. That's where all the good ideas come from.
Couldn't agree more. Here's your second word or phrase, retiring on the beach.
Oh, man, I did that when I was 33 years old. It's way overrated. I was bored silly after 6 months.
I've heard a little bit of the story and would love to know more. But going on to this third word for you, Jim, doomsday prepping.
Well, prepping is very wise, especially now. Doomsday, if you're prepping out of scarcity and fear, then that's not wise. But to be stocked up for an inevitable food supply chain disaster is just a good idea.
I can agree with that. These are going to get a little bit more fun. A few more here. The US dollar.
Overrated. It's a fiat currency backed by confidence, and it's a tool of enslavement.
I love it. Single species grass lawns.
The biggest mass brainwashing scam of all time. Lawns are overrated.
Awesome. And last for you here, definitely could be complex, but I'm going to give you democracy.
Well, democracy in its underlying in spoken intention has pros and cons, right? This idea of people in a group deciding that they can control other people because they gang up is unethical, it's harmful, it's forceful, and it's ridiculous. The idea of people in a group saying, hey, who wants to be on this boat or who wants to have this meal? There's some value to that, as long as it's not held up by force.
Awesome. Love the explanations and the responses. Those are wonderful. Now let's get into some of these details about the mission of your life. But before getting into what's happening today, I think it's really important for folks to understand where it is you came from, Jim, because when I got to learn a little bit more about you, it really painted the whole picture and helped me understand how you got to where you are today, not only physically, geolocationally, but actually from a mindset perspective as well. So, Jim, who are you? What's your background? What was it like growing up for you?
Yeah, well, I really loved my childhood. I grew up in Shoreview, Minnesota, and we lived on a lake. It was a little tiny lake, but there was loads of fish in there, and I was always down playing with the frogs and the snakes and the birds, and I had duckies, and I would grab any kind of animal I could grab and try to make it my pet. And so then growing up, I got into wrestling. My dad was a good wrestler in high school. And so naturally, because we wrestle around a lot, I all of a sudden found a wrestling flyer one day and I said, I want to join the wrestling team. And that was a really good thing for me because, well, I didn't like school. I could not pay attention in school. And in fact, this is important. To this day, I cherish my what they would call ADD. ADD is my choice now. I choose to put my attention where I want to put my attention instead of having some program put attention in my brain, right? So anyway, I went through school. I got C's, and wrestling helped me get C's because I had to wrestle. So there's times in high school where I would have exactly a C average, just so I could be on the wrestling team. And in high school, this was one of my toughest moments in life, and it's often the toughest moments in life that make us. I had beat this guy Jerry Martin 5 times in a row, and it was the state finals, and he beat me. And that was my year to win the state. The next 2 years were horrible years. My senior year, I didn't place. My freshman year in college, I was lost. I didn't know which way I was going. And then I moved to Mankato, Minnesota. And the first thing our college wrestling coach did was he had everybody write their goals. And that was the most important moment, or that was the catalyst for change in my life. Because when I first got these papers and said goals, short-term, long-term, intermediate, and all these different deals, it's like a 3-page document. I hadn't written 3 pages my whole college and high school career, right? So I put the goals down on my desk on a Friday night, and I didn't want to write my goals, but they were there. And the wrestling team, the coach said, if you don't have these on my desk by Monday morning, you're not coming to practice. So Sunday night came along, and I was like, oh God, I'm going to write my goals. So I started writing. And as I started writing, I started conceiving and believing a future for myself that was inspiring, that was compelling, that was exciting. And so I started writing, and I'm like, oh, if I did this and this, I could be an All-American. And then I'm like, oh my God, I could be an All-American. Then I wrote, well, maybe I could be an All-American 3 times. Maybe I could be a national champion, right? And then I started believing the crazy shit I was writing. I handed my goals to my coach, and the coach laughed. He said, goals are meant to be something you can achieve. He actually said that. I love the guy. He's changed my life. Anyway, I ended up being a 4-time All-American and national champion, inducted in the National Hall of Fame, because I created a compelling vision for myself.
That's amazing. And so you achieved these goals that you set out and believed for the first time in your life. It sounds like you wrote them down, you articulated them, and you went after them, and you had this strong, overwhelming belief about them. So what happened once you achieved these great things that a lot of people don't ever get to do because they don't take those steps that you took? You completed it. Then where did you go from there?
You know, there's one incredibly relevant part that happened right before I wrote my goals. I was in this silly network marketing company, and it was just all rah. But on the way to Dallas, we were a 24-hour car ride there and back. And so we had one cassette series, and it was Dennis Waitley's The Psychology of Winning. We listened to that. I got the chills just now. We listened to that there and back, and I was blown away. I had never heard anybody speak like this. In fact, I could not believe that I wasn't taught these things in school. So anyway, then I wrote my goals with that new understanding. So then after college, I wanted to travel and see the world. I moved to Hawaii for 4 years, and then I got a backpack, and I went to 47 different countries, lived with the Maasai in Africa and the jungles of Chiang Mai and all these different really out there places. I love people, and I wanted to see new cultures. And I even went to Karachi, Pakistan, which is really a very interesting energy place for me. And then I was broke. I was living on a backpacker's budget, and I wanted to be wealthy. And I remembered what had happened in my previous goals, and I remembered what I had read. And so I started reading all these books from thinkers and Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Dennis Waitley, all of these amazing teachers about psychology. And I wrote my goals for the second time, that I wanted to have $3 million in 3 years. Now, I had a bartending experience and a teaching degree that was sent to me in the mail, even though I didn't graduate. It was a political thing, because I was inducted in the National Hall of Fame. they had to have me graduate so they could claim a Hall of Fame inductee. So they just sent me my diploma. Anyway, fun how politics works. So I wrote my goals that I wanted to have $3 million in 3 years. My friends who were engineers, very logical minded, they laughed at me and they said that was impossible. One guy, and this is very relevant to the world today, Pete, he got pissed off at me. Like, he was angry. And I'm like, and I thought that was such an interesting reaction. But yet, folks, a lot of you are going through the same thing. You see the world differently than your family, your friends, sometimes your spouse and your neighbors. And sometimes they'll actually be angry at you for seeing the world the way you see it. That's when you step back and you go inside, and you don't blame them for their anger and their thoughts. You just observe that. So anyway, I laughed at this. And 3.5 years later, the company that I founded did $1.3 billion in mortgages. And then I bought a boat, lived on the ocean. I retired. I got bored silly. And that's when I moved to Costa Rica. And that's when I found out about permaculture.
That is just incredible. And I think that obviously you could probably spend hours talking about the emotional and all the motivations behind that entire process. But how old were you actually whenever you moved to Costa Rica?
I was 35 or 6. It was 2006. Okay. And I'm 52 now. So I was 36 years old, looking for the next thing in life.
Absolutely. So you moved to Costa Rica and you were exposed to permaculture there, or you were seeking it?
It was bashed on my head. So I had my first 2 daughters, and I had a sense that there was something bad going on in the economy. It was starting to be 2007, close to 2008. And I had bought thousands of acres of real estate that I thought was the most beautiful real estate in the world. The mountains overlooking the ocean with monkeys on the roof and parrots and all this stuff that I love. Mm-hmm. And I was developing land. And in fact, the first piece we bought a 180 acre cattle farm. And I was a golfer at the time. So I said, I want to build a golf course here. And the first thing we're going to do is build a fruit tree nursery, because I was so blown away by all of the different exotic fruits in Costa Rica. And so we started planting fruit trees up and down every fairway. Well, these people got really angry with me because I was developing a golf course in this very beautiful area. Now, the cattle pasture was a biological desert. It was not beautiful. We were actually upgrading the cattle pasture massively, but it didn't matter to these folks. And they came into my office. I invited them in because I like criticism. I like learning from people who have a different perspective than me. And they were so angry at me, and they started yelling at me, and they said, "You don't know permaculture." I'm like, "I don't. What the heck is permaculture? What are you talking about?" Well, they left the office. It was like 10:30 at night. I wiped the blood off and the sweat and the tears, and I got online and I looked up permaculture. That had now has become a joyful obsession. 15 years later, permaculture within that science has proven the answer to all of the world's biggest problems.
That's so incredible. And the way in which you found it is honestly just reminds me of life's ability to not just surprise us in the things that we need to learn or need to see, but do it in a way that is almost comical when we get to look back, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want to come back on something like that, but I do want to talk to you about once you got exposed to this, right? And now that you're deep into permaculture, you obviously started to have some ideas of how you could leverage it and do something with it. And so is that whenever you decided to leave Costa Rica and start your mission, so to speak?
Actually, the first thing I did, because now it's 2008-9, the economy's gone. I remember it was 2009. The golf course thing totally failed. I left there. So glad I did. And I had another piece of property up in the mountains. It was called Osa Mountain Village. And it was such a crazy time in the world where we kind of thought that the economy crash was going to keep going. And so we're looking at kind of major prepping, right? Like, okay, what are we going to do if the shit hits the fan and all of a sudden there's hordes of bad people looking to steal things and all that stuff, right? So we had this 4-wheel drive access road up to this property that was 700 acres. And I owned that with a couple of friends of mine. And we decided, let's build a community up here and let's do the same thing as far as the fruit trees, but let's put them everywhere. Let's use permaculture to design this community. And I was still just beginning to learn what permaculture really was. And so we started planting fruit trees everywhere and berry bushes and nitrogen fixers and all these different things. And then what happened, it was so interesting because it was now 2010 and 11. And in 2011, we were the most successful development in the country of Costa Rica. Debatably, there was one other one that was monstrous that had a huge history. They probably sold more than us, but we built more homes in that stretch of 2 years than any other development out of 500 in the country. Most of them were completely dead because the economy was gone. And so we were rocking, and the Costa Rican government, some henchmen from the government told our general contractor who was in charge of developing, they said, if you give us $20,000, we'll leave you alone. And that came up the flagpole to me. And I said, no, we're not doing that. And they said, well, if you don't pay them 20 grand, they're going to shut you down, Jim. This is just kind of how it works here. And I said, I won't do that. And it was really a traumatic time in my life, very painful. They ended up shutting us down. We took them to court. We won every round. The first thing the judge did was give them an injunction so they could not come on our property anymore, which was good. But this is a year later after the damage had been done. We were rocking and they shut us down. We actually won every round in court. And according to a court-appointed actuary, they owe us $28 million. I'm not holding my breath. So anyway, so then I realized that the governments, and I still wasn't fully awake to what's going on in the world. Govern means to manage or control or steer, and mente means mind, like put that one together. I wasn't quite aware of all these details. As I became aware, I knew I had to come back here for multiple reasons. And I had to stand courageous and with every bit of my being. Like I said, I'm obsessed with the question, how do we catalyze a shift in consciousness that leads to mass adoption of the permaculture principles, which, as a result of which, we will end mass extinction and deforestation and cancer and heart disease and diabetes and hunger and tyranny around the world. So that has been my obsession for 15 years.
Wow. Wow. It really is an incredible story. And what's even more incredible is how much more there is to unfold, really. And, you know, you talk about these henchmen, so to speak, who kind of made this type of terrible incident happen at that point in your life and have still not resolved it on their end. You know, I've got some family of mine who are from El Salvador, and it's the same type of situation where if you start to make some money and build business and thrive for yourself, well, comes around the corner, the gang members who say, hey, we need a little bit of tax to keep you protected in the community. And it's like, keep us protected from who? From you, from us. And in that case, it's the gang members. But in your case, governments are gangs in a lot of different ways. But
in a lot of different ways.
You've talked to me before offline about how you spend a lot of time focusing on the problems of the world, and how that, of course, helps you become more aware and learn. But eventually you do have to make a switch in mindset to say, okay, I've learned enough. I've gotten out of this what I need. And now it's time to make a shift in mindset to now focus on the solutions of the world. And this is where you started to do that. And it's such an incredible, teeny tiny change, yet such profound ripple effect that can happen. And so coming to the ripple effects now, you have this mission, you have this problem statement that you've just given us with using permaculture to solve XYZ problems in the world. And these are not just little problems, these are massive issues. And if we can fix all of these things with such a seemingly simple solution, well, I'm all ears. And so tell me a little bit about the current state of where you're at with that mission. What's it called, and what are you doing today?
Right. So I will basically lay out, as Victor Hugo said, there's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. He didn't say a new idea, right? An idea, it's an old idea. It's enlightenment. It's using our resources wisely. It's the Garden of Eden. It's growing food instead of lawns. At the end of the day, if we transform half even less than that, but I want half. I want to go for half of the 44 million acres of lawn, which uses more poisons, more chemicals, more labor, more resources than any other crop. The lawn, which does not provide food, when we transition, when we take the poisons out, that's number one. Let's expose the poisons and the poison producers, and let's take them out of the system and replace them with natural, God-given, source-given cures or methods. When we simply do that and we transition half of our lawns, I don't hate lawns, by the way, it's just the ignorance and the imbalance that doesn't work. When we do that, we solve all of it. We bring the food supply back local. And this is not a hypothetical. This has been proven and demonstrated all over the world. And here's the best part. And this is the part where all the BS, the bad science, the belief systems, and the bullshit have been layered and programmed into our minds. People think that growing food is hard work. It's for farmers. Well, how much effort do you put in to that oak tree or that spruce or that poplar or that pine that you know of in your yard or your neighbor's yard? Who manages that?
Yeah, the entire HOAs usually.
Yeah, no, nobody does. Nature. You don't have to do anything to these trees. Like in a forest, who manages the trees in a forest?
I see. Yes, of course.
Nobody, right? The nature knows what she's doing. So when we simply design these landscapes to be food forests, which can be very beautiful landscape designs, or they can be completely wild food forests. But when we design those into the fabric of our society, we create freedom on every level.
So interesting too, because, there's so many times that I've driven down the streets. And again, coming back to some of my family being in El Salvador, you've got fruit trees in all areas, right? It's almost everywhere. But when you go down the street here in America, you're not seeing fruit trees in the medians or fruit trees and bushes on the side of the roads. And so why do you think, just real quickly here, Jim, why do you think that we don't simply have that small change happening in communities?
So back 50 years ago, Henry Kissinger said, if you want to control nations, control oil. If you want to control people, control food. If you want to control the world's currency. This is not just the ramblings of some random guy. This is the strategy spoken by the man who ran the Council of Foreign Relations and who met with every US president and told them how they were going to run things. So this is a strategy of enslavement that has been perpetrated on humanity. And it's very common throughout history. When warring tribes come in, the first thing they do is take over the food supply, which is happening now. That's why over 100 food processing plants and all this food is being destroyed in this. The food distribution network is going down right now, my friends, by design. But the good news is, and this is Bill Mollison's quote, is the one that actually snapped me out of my focus on the problem, which was kind of a crappy time. Though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. When we have mass adoption of using our resources wisely and taking the poisons out, the odds of me getting cancer, the odds of my kids and my family getting cancer, heart disease, diabetes go way down, and it saves me money and it creates beauty. In other words, it's good in every single way.
Wow. Okay, so I'm Hunter Carithers. I'm in Dallas, Texas. I own a home. I've got a little bit of a front lawn. I've got some back lawn as well. I'm in. I want to convert my useless, hard to maintain, chemical-filled lawns with something that actually brings me value and brings any excess my community value. So what do I do? Do I go call Jim Gale? What's my next step?
So everything starts with logical, thoughtful design, permaculture design. This science has basically collaborated now with millions of people around the world to look at the fine details, to observe and interact with what works, and then put that all together in a database of permaculture. And then the people who go to school to become permaculture food forest designers, we've got 45 of these amazing people on our team.
Hmm.
We launched 14 months ago with 7 people. Now we've got about a total of about 800 and some people globally. We're helping people grow food. In fact, Food Forest Abundance exists to help families grow food instead of lawns. So you would start by getting a food forest landscape design, what we call a blueprint. And it's a custom document where one of our designers will call you and they'll ask you a bunch of questions. They'll research what zone you're in, what microclimates you might have, the size and distribution of the things in your yard already. And then they'll design the edible landscape into what you currently have.
Wow. So that's very fantastic. So I get this blueprint, and from there I can decide whether or not I want to sort of do it myself and install this food forest and create this abundance in my own land, or you have a team of experts who can actually come out and install it for me.
That's exactly right. So we want to solve all of the reasons why people say, I can't grow food, which they don't have to even grow food. They just have to have a property, and then nature will grow the food as long as it's designed properly and installed properly. And the most important thing is building soil. So within the permaculture design, we layer in the nitrogen fixers and the dynamic accumulators, which are just fancy words for saying the types of plants that actually benefit each other, like flowers. Flowers bring in the bees and the butterflies and the hummingbirds and the birds, and those become the pollinators for your food forest. So we actually build beauty into every system.
It's incredible. This is something I actually got to learn over the past couple of years, learning about regenerative agriculture, visiting regenerative ranches, Rep Provisions Ranch out with Eric Perner, seeing his land, seeing the differences between how they're using nature and symbiotic and beneficial plants that work together in nature to grow better yield, better, healthier soil and grass and plants and whatever fruits or vegetables you want to grow, versus a conventional method where you're just using toxins and chemicals. You're blasting out any life that was there in the first place. And therefore, there's no biodiversity, no growth, no health.
That's
so,
right.
Jim, I'm fired up and I'm telling people about this. What are the different ways that people can get involved in this mission?
Oh, that's such a great question. So the main thing that we want to do is we want to plant seeds of thought, idea seeds, and physical seeds. So our goal, and this is how we change the world, is when we inspire enough people to grow food, and then they become demonstration sites for more people to grow food. So if anybody out there would like to turn your yard into a food forest, that will, put it this way, I'm investing most of my fiat into food right now. And the food is going up like this, and the fiat's going down like this. So I'm doing exactly what I'm suggesting with my own property. And hundreds and hundreds of fruit trees. We're going big on 52 acres, food everywhere. Wow. So if you want to grow food, whether you have a 20th of an acre or 1,000,000 acres, we can design your property to be the maximum yield on the least amount of input or energy. And then if you want to be in the business of helping other people grow food, it's a very simple business. If you are a landscaper, or if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're just somebody who likes to work outside or even manage crews, then think about and talk with us about becoming a food forest cooperative partner. And it's an incredible business model that's timed to be very, very lucrative. It's like a 40% margin, kind of like landscape. It's a very good business.
That is awesome. That gives a lot of people different opportunities to get involved in this. And so if I'm someone who wants to install these food forests on my land, great. If I want to get involved from a business perspective, I can do that. Now, what I've also started to hear through the grapevine is some other ways that you're basically empowering others to have access to this abundance design thinking. And I'm loving the fact that you're basically taking your own medicine first, because out in Florida, you have what you can call a sort of proof of concept, although it's really becoming less of a proof of concept and more of the real thing every single day. Yeah. And you have an entire sort of living community that is fully sustainable with these food forests. Is that correct?
We are creating a completely off-grid community called Galt's Landing, after John Galt from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And it's nice homes. We've got the first home is up. And we've got a 6-acre pond, and we're designing that pond to be productive with 7 different types of fish and snails and all these different ducks and everything. And then every yard is going to be, and all of our common area. In fact, this is relevant. People ask us, what are your dues in this community? Because it's on a private 430-acre lake. We've got the only dock on this incredible lake with bass and everything, and a runway on our East Coast where, anyway, pretty neat scenario at the end of the road. And I laugh because our dues, we use our land as an asset, not as a liability. So we don't share the expenses, we share the profits.
Wow. Flipping it on its head then.
Every HOA community, they use their land as a liability. If we simply traded the ornamentals and half the lawns for food production, everything, I mean, the health would explode. The value on every level of those communities would explode to life.
Because this is non-toxic food. Again, this is the best that you can get. It's not in the grocery store full of toxins. It's not traveled for 300 to 500 or 1,000 miles. It's not sitting there on the shelf for days and days, sometimes weeks, where it's no longer fresh or local. So now that we have, and we've only got a couple minutes here, Jim, because I know we had some technical difficulties up front, and I want to respect your time. But tell me just quickly, real quick, a little bit about what you've got coming up. I think that you're planning something to really blast this off. Tell me a little bit more about what's coming up.
So we have an event coming on the 4th of July that we intend will change the world. And why will that be? Well, for one thing, we're going to have 4 strategy sessions. And the people we're bringing in, Foster Gamble, who created the Thrive Network, and Darren Olean, who won the Emmy last year for Down to Earth, and Dr. His name escapes me, Dr. Andy Wakefield, amazing people. And we're all coming together, and we're bringing our networks together, and we're strategizing. How do we create awareness of the solutions to these problems that we're facing? And how do we bring people get together in communities to work together and collaborate and build up and start? Because there's a lot of people that are lonely out there. They know what's going on and they don't have a tribe, right? So we want to bring the tribes together where people know and they can communicate, and then we can start working on solutions together. And then our launch strategy is pretty exciting. We're going to be going out through all of these different influencers on the same day. We're going to live stream on the 4th of July. And then we're also putting together all of the strategy sessions. And throughout the month of July, we intend to be seen by hundreds of millions of people, and then billions, because we have it. We have the strategy that can really lift humanity out of this crazy mess we're in.
Wow. That sounds super exciting. I'm super happy to watch that come to fruition. And now we've talked about mindset and business and freedom in the forms of health and finance. This show also covers a little bit about blockchain and tokenization and how technology can help us deploy our passions. Again, I know we've only got 1 minute left here, Jim, but is there anything that you can share with us on that front?
Yes. So we are bringing to market a digital asset that is directly linked to food production. And when I first meditated on this idea, I brought in this architect and this digital asset architect. And I said, there's 4 primary objectives. We must incentivize food production at scale to supplant the global fiat currencies, and we must incentivize collaboration. Those 4 primary objectives. And what we've created, what he has created with the foundation that I've given him, I got tears in my eyes when I listened to him share all the details. This currency has the potential to literally change the energy of society. Right now, the dollar is a debt instrument. It's a tool of enslavement. A lot of currencies out there, cryptos out there, are born as liabilities to society. They take time and energy away from society, and they're based on nothing. They're linked to nothing. Our Sprouts and Yield coin is farmed, not mined, when people grow food, which puts the energy, it takes the energy away from the gamers and gamblers of society, and it puts the stewardship of our currency in the hands of the actual producers of society.
That just sounds like something totally new. Yet,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you're literally tokenizing the ability and the asset that is growing non-toxic food. I
Yeah.
mean, that is pure abundance. I would love to have
Yeah.
a follow up on that. I think I'll reach out to your architect and talk a little bit more about it on the show, possibly. Jim, there's so many things you have going on, and we didn't even get to touch on some of the things that are really exciting as well, such as a documentary that you have kind of documenting what it is you're doing over there with some really incredible actors and producers.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm really excited about is the connections that you've made with some local politicians who are literally taking what you're doing with food forest abundance and incorporating it into their campaign strategies.
Yeah.
All, I'm sure, going to be discussed and unveiled fully at this July 4th event. So what a great day to really display independence. And I'm so happy for you and what we have going on together here. Thank you so much for joining, Jim. I'm so happy for you. And you and I are going to be talking again very soon. Take care. And thank you again.
Thank you, Hunter. And everybody out there, have a great day. Time to grow food.
Yes, sir. Bye now. Thank you.
Ciao.
All right, folks, that was Jim Gale. What an incredible conversation that we just had. So many exciting things that are happening in the ecosystem. Actually, coming up on July 4th, I believe around 3 p.m. Eastern Time, you can find a live stream event by Food Forest Abundance at their Facebook profile. So go check them out, and definitely also be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed or found anything valuable from this show. You can also find me at www.digitaloilhunter.com to check out all the other things we have going on and to subscribe to the newsletter so you can keep up to date for new episodes as well as new opportunities and strategies as we go forward into this next stage of life. So thankful for you to stay here and watch this and join us on this conversation. Can't wait to bring you more value-packed information next time. Stay tuned and see you soon.